DirectX11. That's right, guys. DirectX11. Let's see how much of this is going to be completely incomprehensible to us. The good news is, guys, we actually have resident technician Sassy in the chat who actually knows how some of this stuff works. So if I say anything stupid, Sassy will start spamming emotes in the chat and you will actually know when I've gone wrong. So let's go, guys. Let's check this out. Directx support is coming to Guild Wars 2. This is James Phillips, Senior Engine Programmer on the Guild Wars 2 team. Directx Support 11 is a project that has been a long time in the making. In this post, I'm going to go over some of the high-level technical decisions that were made to determine the shape of this project, as well as a walkthrough of our graphics runtime and how the Directx 11 renderer affects performance. The beta will begin on September 21st. You can opt into the beta in-game in the graphics options menu. This change takes effect after you start in the game. That is very exciting. And by the way, guys, this actually might be permanent. Just so everyone's aware of this, guys, this actually may well be a permanent situation. You will be able to switch over on the 21st and stay like this and see as it iterates. Obviously, you might have some crashes. There might be some graphical glitches as they refine the system. And of course, it will get better over time, but very, very cool, guys. This actually coincides with the World versus World alliances and world restructuring stuff, which is perfect because, hey, what better place to test it? What better place to test it in the frame melting, cauldron that is World versus World? So, why did we decide to upgrade to Directx 11 in the first place? This is a great question, by the way, guys, because I think a lot of people are like, why isn't it 12? Why is it not DX12? Why this one? Why do they do this? Well, let's find out. Client performance is a priority for us, and we want everyone to be able to play with the highest possible frame rate. We pinpointed that sometimes the game could stall waiting for rendering work to complete. Guild Wars 2 has been live for 9 years now, and implementing some Directx 11 dependent features can help the game continue to look beautiful over time. It's something they were also talking about. They were talking about this idea that they could continue to add additional technologies. I believe in particular Directx 11 has a lot of extra lighting features that can be added to the game, and that is a big deal because lighting is one of the, in my opinion, the most impactful things on a game's appearance, right? So better shadows, better lighting, right? Stuff like that is maybe on the menu over time, which is actually very exciting because I've always found the lighting in Guild Wars 2 to be a little bit off, not quite there. So DX11, very exciting in that regard. Directx 11 also offers some modern technology options that aren't available in Directx 9. Upgrading to Directx 11 is the first step to being able to do more shiny things. There we go. Love to see it. After careful research, we decided to integrate the open source rendering library BGFX into Guild Wars 2. BGFX is well written and supports various graphics backends and is already used in many games industry-wide. You can learn more about it on their official website. Okay, let's actually, I'm just curious, like, let's see if we can actually find, I want to see an example of, like, a game that's there, actually. Let's see, are there any other, is there, like, a list of all the games that it's in? Actually, I'm super curious. Now, this is where it gets really technical, guys. If you want to see this stuff here, that's going to get out of control, right? That's going to be, ooh, goodness me, right? Okay, right, this might be a little bit too far here, guys, okay? This is out of control, right? Okay, I'm time to run away at this point. Right now, guys, it is time to run away. Let's get the hell out of here, project page, actually. Wait, no? Never mind, I'm out. But anyway, let's continue to move on here. We chose to use Directx 11 instead of Directx 12 or Vulkan because we found that switching to BGFX's Directx 11 implementation provided enough of a performance boost that the graphics backend was no longer even a limiting factor for client performance. That is big, actually. That is absolutely huge. So the claim is here that this was enough of an upgrade that the graphics no longer became the biggest deal there. So that's actually a surprise to me. That almost implies that, well, either there's some other very, very funky stuff going on that's causing the game to lag a lot, or, of course, that this could be a significant performance increase if you have a powerful enough machine. Directx 11 is very stable and has already been used by thousands of games for nearly a decade at this point. It allows us to provide the support back to Windows Vista, while Vulkan support starts at Windows 8, and Directx support starts at 12 support at Windows 10. As far as graphics features are concerned, jumping from DX9 to DX11 gives us plenty of options for adding interesting features to the engine in years to come. Supporting more than one of these backends would balloon QA work for little tangible benefits. Yeah, and you know, I actually spoke with someone before this because, fun fact, guys, DirectX11 actually kind of got noticed before it was even announced because the game was loading DirectX 11 in addition to DirectX 9. There was a bit of testing going on a while back. And this was exactly what the developer who I was in contact with actually said. To be clear, not an ArenaNet developer, just a kind of enthusiast C++ program, actually. And they said that a really big reason why they might not want to upgrade is because a lot of people are running old hardware, and they, particularly Windows 7, I think, is something that a lot of people are still using, and therefore compatibility is relevant for a game that is as old as Guild Wars 2. Because bear in mind, guys, not everyone is as greasy and nerdy as we are, right? With like the latest hardware and all that kind of stuff there. The current DirectX 9 renderer hasn't been altered in any significant way. One of the philosophies I had as I built this was to have the DirectX 11 renderer look the same. So in other words, the game will not look different. It will just perform better, and maybe over time, right, okay, we'll see more graphics, things being added there, or maybe settings that can only be enabled with the DX11 renderer, for example. If I was making changes to both at the same time, there will be no ground truth to how things are supposed to look. Eventually, the DirectX 9 renderer will be deprecated, then removed as the new renderer becomes stable. Wow. Okay. So the goal is to eventually completely replace this then in that case, right? And just completely move away there. Okay. I get it. Interesting. I imagine that will be quite... when we say eventually, we're probably looking at a timescale of years here, I would imagine. This will be like a long-term thing, right? Because obviously technologies do move on. Frame dive. Uh-oh, guys. It's time to get scared, okay? Because I think we're about to get some technical information. Now I'd like to go in on how the DirectX 11 renderer affects performance for the game. To start from essentials, video games work just like a movie in that you're watching still images that are being flipped in front of you rapidly. We call each still a frame. This process is where the term frames per second comes from. The higher the FPS, the smoother the action looks, until you hit the physical limit of your display. This process of continually responding to inputs, keyboard and mouse, and producing frames is the game loop. Here's a nice image there. Coming up are some timeline visualizations of the game loop. Until I'm taking all this data from the above location in Lion's Arch using the best appearance graphics preset. I picked this spot since there's a lot to render. There's all the city, and then the technique we use for real-time reflections is basically rendering the whole world a second time upside down. Spicy. I'm using an Intel i7 6700 CPU and an NVIDIA 1080 GPU for the test. So good hardware, right? This is very solid hardware. So above is a screenshot from a visualization tool we use called telemetry, developed by Rad Game Tools. This visualizes how the game's work gets spread across your CPU cores. Time is represented horizontally. This is displaying 2 frames of game logic. I blurred out a lot of the identifiers for clarity. Do we need to actually look at this? I mean, this is kind of an interesting thing, but is there anything in particular that we should be looking at here? I think it is kind of interesting, right? I really hope people look at this, because what you can see is, guys, is that a lot of people always say, oh, Guild Wars 2. It doesn't do any multi-threading. It never multi-threads anything, guys. But you can actually clearly see, right, that it is, in fact, actually using a lot of threaded workloads here. Maybe not quite as much as you'd expect there. And you can see that a lot of it is, there's a lot going on this thread 5, right, I think. I believe over here, a lot going on there. But you can definitely see that there is work being spread out to the other cores there as well. And, of course, that was a 22.8 milliseconds. That's over 60 FPS, I believe, there. Kind of an interesting thing there, right? Yeah, this is how long it took to render the entire frame. And then you have the different sections, right, of rendering that frame, I believe. Yeah, it's a little bit worse than 60 FPS. Yeah, not quite 60 FPS. So kind of like 50 FPS or something like that. Okay, but there you go. Interesting stuff there, guys. Interesting stuff. Okay, okay, here we go. Let's see. Each horizontal row represents a logical thread. Here you can see I have 6 worker threads. We adjust the number of worker threads depending on how many CPU threads your CPU supports. I have a chip that supports 8 hardware threads, so the game divides them as 1 game thread, 1 render thread, and 6 worker threads. Note that Guild Wars 2 has other threads running as well, which I'm not displaying here. Those threads are not particularly CPU intensive and are not relevant to this post. So here you have this kind of like this visualization of all the things that are being being divided up. So yeah, we have a lot going on this main thread, then the render thread, then all these other worker threads. They're doing less, but they are still doing something, particularly in like little bursts almost, right? You're seeing that they're kind of like chilling out for the first half of the frame. They're like, oh, okay, we need to do something now. And they go back to doing nothing. So, well, obviously, like the dream world is, right, is when everything would look like this top one here, right? Where everything's getting maxed out. But obviously, that's easier said than done, right? Let's put it like that. The various blocks within the thread channels represent work happening. When the thread is displaying as empty, that means it's idle and not doing any endgame work. In these spaces, the hardware thread may be picking up work from other applications on your machine. That's why, guys, only run Guild Wars 2, nothing else. Never run anything else, guys. Okay? And obviously, this is a really interesting point here, guys. Why is it that DX9 or other older games work like this? Well, the simple fact is, guys, is that back in the day, people would be running games off, dual core processors, quad cores, right? I mean, like, it hasn't really, and nowadays, because obviously, most people are kind of looking at least a quad core, 6 core, even 8 cores a lot of the time, particularly with the new AMD Ryzen stuff right there. They typically have a lot more cores than old stuff. But the reason why a lot of games are like this is because you wouldn't be able to do it on the old hardware, right? That's just how it is, right? I imagine today, if I had to guess, I would say that most people are still running a quad-core CPU, or maybe 6, but I feel like on average it's probably 4, right? Is the average. And then kind of as you get into more enthusiast users, you're kind of looking at 6, 8, and then even more after that if you're really hardcore going into this type of hardware. So it is worth noting. It's not that, ArenaNet is so big dumb. Why didn't they make their game use every single thread? It was like, no one had those threads, right? Those threads don't even exist, right? Back in the day, right? Oh, here we go. We actually have nice data. We can actually take a look here. Steam hardware survey. Let's see. Number of here we go. Number of CPUs per computer. This is the right one, right? So yeah, you can actually see that. Yeah, it's kind of like 4 and 6 are definitely the popular ones here. 2, but look, dude, this is actually fascinating. So that means that over 50% of people have 4 or less, right? I think. Yeah, wow, actually that's even more dominant than I originally thought. Okay, well, it's actually insane. Okay, check the bottom table. Okay, yeah, 4, I was right, yeah, 4 CPUs. Yeah, wow, is the physical CPUs here? 36%. 6 is very common, 8 is a lot less common. It is increasing, of course, but 6 is like the one that's kind of really filling out right now. But yeah, that's kind of interesting, right, guys? Like, it kind of makes it. And bear in mind, this is in 2021. Like, Guild Wars 2 did not come out in 2021. Guild Wars 2 came out in 2012, right? It's been a very long time. So back in then, guys, you'd be looking at almost entirely either 2 or 4. Particularly like for the average piece of average hardware there as well, right? So that's why it's like this. Okay, here we go. Yeah, here you go. So you have these logical, here's the frame, then it starts doing stuff, then there's another frame, it starts doing stuff again, and you can kind of see it looks basically the same, right? You're seeing the same functions kind of pop up a little bit differently every single time there, but there you go. Anyway, let's continue. So, okay, here we go. Here's an important thing. This is where the game graphics frame loops. Since the beginning of the game frame doesn't do any rendering, we let some work from the last frame overrun into the next frame so we can do as much work in parallel as possible. At some point, though, you must wait for the last frame to flush out so you can start submitting work for the next one. Here you might have noticed a red block of work on the main thread, which lines up with some work ending on the render thread. This is what we want to eliminate. The game thread should never have to wait for rendering work to complete. So that's basically this here, right? So here you have this little segment, which is actually significant, right? So they're trying to chop away this little segment here, which, as you can see, I would say that was about an 1/8, I would say, if I had to guess, like vaguely an 1/8 of the entire bar. So that and what we read earlier in the article is that they essentially said that they were able to actually pretty much get rid of all of this delay as far as I understand it. So yes, that's actually very cool stuff. So they're trying to get rid of this entire red section and then therefore speed it up by a fairly significant amount there as well. Very cool stuff. Very, very cool stuff indeed. There are some other much smaller red blocks in the main thread. That's the main thread waiting for job thread work to complete. Here we build out detailed lists of instructions for the rendering thread to execute. When a block of generalized rendering work has been generated, it gets handed across the render thread. The render thread converts the rendering work into per graphics backend, OpenGL, or DX9 specifics. Okay, so we have, basically this is just explaining all these different things. This is like a very kind of high level overview of what is actually going on here. I think this is not super pertinent. Okay, this probably means a lot more if you actually know how this kind of stuff works here with regards to this. But basically, they're saying that this is now doing some stuff with DX9, right? Wow, incredible. Okay, amazing stuff. And here we go. Aha! Now we can actually see the new thing, the DX11 beta renderer frame. Here's how the new renderer looks in the profile. The layout of the threads is the same. Okay, do we actually have do we get like a side-by-side comparison actually? Here we go. Okay, the layout there is the same, and you can see that basically you do not have the waiting time anymore. The main thread is no longer waiting for render thread to complete work. BGFX completes all of its rendering work in less than 6 milliseconds. Ooh! And that line indicates where the graphics flip happens. The main thread must no longer wait for the render thread to complete. This is accomplished because of how BGFX is architected. Draw calls are collected on the game thread and on worker thread as well. We'll get to that. Then when the frame ends, BGFX processes those calls on its render thread. Now we have a lot of headroom for drawing. Okay, so basically what we're saying here is that basically they've cut out all of this stuff here, and now there's a bit of extra space to actually put it on the screen, therefore increasing performance. I know, that's pretty cool. 50% user, 16 gigs of RAM based on Steam. How can I have that many, but 2-core CPU? I think a lot of stuff ships with like 8 to 16 these days, right? That's probably why. Okay, I like it. I love to see it. So let's actually see. We can actually look at performance here, right? So bear in mind, guys, this is all taken at the same place. So here you go, guys. We can actually evaluate this. Someone in the chat, guys, crunch the numbers. So here, I believe we basically have, this has now gone to 19.61. Right? And then 21.25 as those two things there. So these are the different frames, right? So it's 19.61 and 21.25. And then the original one, I believe, was 26 or something like that. In that kind of, or was it, wait, was it 20, it was like 22.8. Okay, so let's see. How much value? Yeah, 22 ms, now 19 ms. So yeah, we've gone from 22 milliseconds to 19 milliseconds. So that is actually a pretty significant thing, actually. So that's a pretty significant increase in performance. And of course, that's only, not enough to gauge performance. I mean, yeah, obviously, right? But we're kind of eyeballing here a little bit there, right? 19 is 55 FPS. There you go, guys. We are now, look, we're approaching the 60 dream. And of course, it's going to take a little while. And there will be more iteration and more processing, right? And more development to make that even better than it already is. But hey, it's pretty good, right? 45 FPS to 55 FPS in like a really intense area. I don't know. That's pretty cool. That doesn't sound too bad at all, right? Like they've cut out like, an extra 10 FPS. That ain't so bad. If you can kind of get around that. Okay. Ooh. Will I get a benefit with a potato core? Well, this actually seems to imply that you would, yeah. Because you do get some jobified stuff over here. So basically, this BGFX is doing some stuff on your other cores as well. But it doesn't look like you might not necessarily need to have loads of threads to make this work. But you certainly will need a few there. So I think you probably do want to maybe a little bit more than that. Time to get an upgrade, man. Time to get an upgrade. Okay. I get 20 to 40 more frames of DX12, or the DX proxy. Well, this is essentially probably going to get you probably pretty similar results, I would say, to that. And of course, it is going to, over time get better and better and maybe render the DX12 thing obsolete. But it will be interesting to see like how it actually kind of compares, right? I think it's going to be something to do there. We want to see people actually do some research, get some data, and actually collect frame rates and try and get some comparable scenes comparing DX9 with the DX12 proxy, and then of course the DX11 stuff there as well. We shall have to see. That is it, guys. Okay, very, very cool stuff. I honestly love these updates. I love this. It's so cool. I do have a bit of an interest in kind of on the more technical side, and I hope people do as well. Big shout out there to James Fulop there for actually giving us like a proper thing. I believe this guy was actually the guy who replied. Oh, who's got this guy's tweet? Can someone actually get me this guy's tweet? Because I believe there were people discussing this, and he actually replied on Twitter, did he not? actually saying how effective that it actually might end up being. Might edit that in at some point into the video there. But yeah, he actually said some very optimistic and positive things on Twitter there as well. I believe that's the same guy, but very cool, lovely presentation here as well. Nice colors. I love to see it, guys. Okay, I love to see it. The future is bright for the performance of Guild Wars 2. Big brain communication. Want to see more. I mean, what a communication frenzy. We had Alliances podcast with Grouch and Ray today. Tomorrow, we have CMC going crazy with the new Elite Special. Wow, we're juicing up, man. Okay, it's good. 2021 is the year of Guild Wars 2. 2022 is also the year of Guild Wars 2. Very nice.